Welcome to our deep dive, everyone. Today we're taking a closer look at the Supreme Court of India.
Really going beyond just the usual, you know, dates and names.
Yeah, we're talking about like its architectural symbolism and even a little bit of judicial intrigue.
Ooh, intrigue. I like that.
Right. And to do that, our source is the official Supreme Court website.
Which is great because it was updated just a few days ago.
Super recent. So our goal today is to really give you a sense of the court's evolution, its physical presence, and some of the big players.
It's like understanding not just what happened, but the why behind it all.
Totally. It's like piecing together this puzzle of history. So let's start at the very beginning. The Supreme Court was established on January 26th, 1950.
The same day India's constitution came into effect. That's not a coincidence.
Just going to say, why that date?
It marked India's transition to a republic, and having the Supreme Court established on that very day, it really highlights its role as the guardian of the Constitution, this brand new republic.
Wow. So picture it right. The atmosphere must have been electric.
A new era was dawning.
But here's a fun fact you might not know. The Supreme Court's first home was not some grand building.
A humble beginning.
Very humble. They actually operated out of the Chamber of Princes in the old Parliament House.
The same space the Federal Court of India used to occupy.
So much history in those walls. Can you imagine the lawyers and judges like working there, laying the groundwork for this whole new legal system?
It really shows you the continuity, right? Even as things were changing so much.
It sets the stage. Now, of course, they eventually moved to their current location on Tilak Marg in 1958, but the official inauguration,
When was that?
2 days after it was established, January 28th, 1950.
So even before they had their own building.
Exactly. It was a huge event. The first Chief Justice of India, Harilal J. Kania, was there. Other judges, the Prime Minister, ambassadors, you name it.
Speaking of history, there's something I found really interesting on the website. They went all out to make the inauguration official. Like really official.
Oh, tell me more.
They meticulously recorded the entire proceedings in the Supreme Court's records.
Wow. Talk about dedication to preserving their legacy. Okay, let's fast forward to the current building. The one we all picture when we think of the Supreme Court.
Inaugurated in 1958 by President Rajendra Prasad.
And designed to resemble the scales of justice.
Which is more than just a design choice.
Oh, definitely.
Think about it. The central wing. It represents the beam of the scale, with the courts on either side symbolizing the weighing of arguments and evidence.
It's like a constant visual reminder of the balance and fairness they strive for.
Exactly. It's beautiful and symbolic all at once.
Absolutely. It's also got this massive 27 6-meter high dome and a colonnaded veranda.
Pretty impressive.
Very. And then you've got the statues in the courtyard, like the life-size statue of Mahatma Gandhi.
A figure who truly embodies those values of peace and justice.
And then more recently, in November 2023, they unveiled a 7-foot statue of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar holding a copy of the Constitution.
Now, that is a powerful image.
Tell me about it.
Dr. Ambedkar was the chief architect of the Constitution.
Right.
And to have his statue right there in the heart of the institution he shaped, it's really a tribute to his legacy and his vision for India.
It's a reminder that the court's role is all about interpreting and upholding that Constitution.
Absolutely.
Speaking of evolving, the building itself has had to change to keep up with the times. 3 major expansions in 1979, 1994, and 2015.
And then a whole new additional building complex opened in 2019.
That just goes to show how much the volume of cases and the complexity of the issues they're dealing with has grown.
It's a sign of the times for sure.
It makes you wonder what they'll have to do in the future, right? How will they keep adapting?
A great question.
Now, here's something I found really interesting. In the early days, all the judges would sit together to hear cases.
All of them.
Yep, a chief justice and 7 others. This was called en banc.
Wow, so everyone was involved in every case.
Right. But as you can imagine, as the number of cases grew, that became pretty unmanageable.
So what do?
Well, they had to change things up. They moved to a system with smaller benches.
Makes sense. That way more cases could be heard at the same time.
Exactly. Today, most cases are heard by just 2 or 3 judges.
But for those really big constitutional cases, they form larger constitution benches.
It's like they created this system that could adjust based on how complex the case was.
Brilliant.
And to handle all of this, Parliament has been steadily increasing the number of judges over time.
From 8 in 1950 to 34 today.
That's a huge increase, but it shows you just how much the Supreme Court's responsibilities have expanded.
Definitely. And speaking of how things work, All the proceedings are conducted in English.
Guided by the Supreme Court rules of 2013 and other procedural guidelines.
Those rules are so important. They ensure consistency and fairness for everyone involved. It's like having a legal playbook.
A playbook that's been refined and updated over time, just like the building itself and the number of judges.
It really shows you how the Supreme Court has constantly adapted to meet the needs of the nation.
And that adaptability is key to its role as the highest judicial authority in India.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you know what truly brings the Supreme Court to life?
What's that?
The cases themselves. The landmark rulings that have shaped Indian society.
You're right. Those rulings have touched the lives of millions. Let's dive into some of those, shall we?
Let's. It's like a roadmap for justice, you
Right.
know? Make sure everything is transparent and there's a standard way of doing things.
And that roadmap has had to evolve over time, just like everything else we've talked about, the building the number of judges.
It highlights how the court has adapted to the changing needs of the nation.
It really does. But the physical space, the procedures, those are just the setting. What really matters are the cases, the rulings that have shaped Indian society.
You're absolutely right. Those rulings affect the lives of millions.
Exactly. So let's talk about some of those landmark cases.
Let's. One that immediately comes to mind is the Kesavananda Haradi case from 1973.
I've heard of that one. It's a pretty big deal, right?
Huge. It's considered a cornerstone of Indian constitutional law. It established something called the Basic Structure Doctrine.
And what does that mean exactly?
Basically, it limits Parliament's power to amend the Constitution. The court ruled that Parliament can make amendments, but they can't change the Constitution's basic structure, its core framework.
So it's like setting boundaries, protecting the core principles of the Constitution.
Exactly. It was a bold move by the court asserting its role as the ultimate interpreter and protector of the Constitution.
Wow. And this doctrine has been used in so many cases since then.
Oh, yeah. Countless times. It ensures that the Constitution remains relevant and adaptable while still upholding its core values.
So one case had this huge ripple effect, shaping the legal landscape for decades.
Precisely. And there are others too. Like in 1993, there was the Vishaka case, which addressed sexual harassment at work.
That's an important one, especially at a time when there was no specific law in India dealing with that issue.
Right. So the court had to step in. They looked at international conventions, human rights principles, and they created guidelines for employers.
They were called the Vishaka Guidelines, right?
Yep. And they outlined how to prevent and address sexual harassment in the workplace.
So the court basically created a framework for protection where there wasn't one.
They did. It was a huge step towards ensuring a safe working environment for women, and it paved the way for the enactment of a specific law against sexual harassment in 2013.
Wow. So the court's ruling actually led to legislative change.
It's a great example of how powerful the court's influence can be.
It's amazing how these rulings can have such a real impact on people's lives.
Absolutely. Another great example of that is the Bodhiswamy judgment from 2017.
The one about the right to privacy.
That's the one. It upheld the right to privacy as a fundamental right under the Indian Constitution.
That makes sense. Privacy is so essential to human dignity. Why was this case so important?
It came about because of the Aadhaar program, the biometric ID system.
Right.
People were worried about privacy violations because of all the personal data being collected and stored.
Yeah, that's a valid concern, especially in today's digital world.
Exactly. The court recognized that, and they affirmed that the right to privacy is crucial for human dignity and autonomy, and therefore it's protected by the Constitution.
That's huge. It must have had major implications for data protection and surveillance.
It did. The Bodhiswamy judgment set a precedent for future cases. It emphasized the need to balance security with individual privacy.
It's fascinating how the court has to navigate these complex issues, right? Interpreting the Constitution in light of modern challenges.
It's a constant process of evolution and interpretation.
We've talked about fundamental rights, but what about cases that have a broader impact on society?
Oh, there are tons. Like in 2018, the Supreme Court decriminalized homosexuality.
By striking down that colonial-era law.
Exactly. It was a major victory for LGBTQ+ rights in India.
It's amazing how the court can shape the very fabric of society through its rulings.
It's a powerful reminder of the role of the judiciary in a democracy.
Are there any recent examples of rulings that have had that kind of impact?
In 2020, there was the Sabarimala Ayyappan Temple case. Remember that one?
Vaguely. Remind me.
It was about the temple's ban on women of menstruating age entering.
Right. That was a very sensitive issue with religious and cultural dimensions.
It was. The court ruled that the ban violated the principles of equality enshrined in the Constitution.
So they basically said that the Constitution guarantees equal rights to all citizens regardless of gender or religious beliefs.
Exactly. They emphasized that point.
I bet that ruling sparked a lot of debate.
It did. It was a big conversation starter all across the country. People were talking about social reform, religious practices, the interpretation of fundamental rights.
Wow. It's clear that the Supreme Court's decisions have a ripple effect that goes way beyond legal precedents.
They sparked dialogue, they challenged norms, and they shaped the course of India's journey as a nation.
It's really remarkable.
It is. It's a testament to the power of the judiciary in a democratic society. The Supreme Court is the guardian of the Constitution, and it plays a crucial role in upholding the rule of law, protecting individual rights, and shaping the future of India.
It's like this intricate tapestry woven with legal principles, social values, and the stories of a nation's evolution.
I love that analogy. It
Yeah.
really captures the essence of the Supreme Court. It's a place where history, law, and society all come together.
And as we've seen in this deep dive, it's a place that's constantly evolving, adapting, and shaping the India of today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's amazing to think about everything we've learned about the Supreme Court of India.
From those early days in the Chamber of Princes.
Right. To that incredible building on Tilak Marg today.
It's really grown and changed alongside India itself.
And through it, all those landmark rulings have not just interpreted the law.
But they've shaped how we understand fundamental rights, social justice, what it means to be Indian.
It all started with those early days, right? The hustle and bustle of a new nation being built.
And then we saw how the court expanded physically with new buildings and procedures.
And even just the sheer number of judges.
It all reflects the growing complexity of India's legal system.
It's fascinating how even the small details matter.
Like,
Those meticulously recorded inauguration proceedings.
oh yeah, or the architectural symbolism.
They all point to this commitment to preserving their legacy and upholding the values of justice.
Speaking of which, those statues of Gandhi and Ambedkar in the courtyard,
They're powerful symbols.
they really are. They remind us of those core values: peace, justice, equality, the vision of a just India,
And then we talked about those landmark judgments
covering everything from privacy and sexual harassment.
to religious freedom and LGBTQ plus rights.
It's incredible how the court has addressed such a wide range of issues through its interpretations of the Constitution.
And those rulings haven't just stayed within the courtroom.
Not at all. They've sparked debates across the country, challenged norms, and set precedents that continue to shape our lives.
It's clear that the Supreme Court's impact goes way beyond those walls.
It's a driving force for social change, and it shapes the direction of India's journey as a nation.
So the next time you see a picture of that building or hear about a big Supreme Court ruling,
Take a moment to think about all the history, the people, the ideas behind it.
it's a living institution, always evolving, and its story is far from over.
And we're all a part of that story. As citizens, it's our responsibility to understand the legal system, to engage with it, and to keep striving for a more just and equitable India.
So what do you think? What issues might come before the court in the future?
What new challenges will it face?
And how will its decisions shape the India of tomorrow?
Those are questions worth thinking about. The Supreme Court's journey is a reflection of India's own journey, and it's a journey that's still unfolding.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. It's been a fascinating exploration of the Supreme Court of India.
And remember, the pursuit of justice is an ongoing process. We all have a role to play in shaping a better future for India.